anything?
I don't want to be misquoted.
All right, I'm running out of time. Can we make this quick?
Yeah, of course. All I'm saying is that it's impossible, it's logically inconceivable that dependent things can depend upon dependent things ad infinitum. All I'm saying
That's
is
why
that
they're not infinite.
Nobody claims that.
Yeah.
Nobody claims that.
Fundamental particles don't
So
depend on anything.
Pardon?
Can you prove to me that fundamental particles depend on anything?
Yes. They depend upon other things. Of course they do. Well, come here and you prove to me that they don't. Come.
You're the one trying to prove something to me. The burden of proof is on you.
No. I've said, you've just made a claim actually. You said that.
I've said that.
Julia, sorry.
Necessarily for your argument, you need to prove a thing.
No, you said that particles don't depend on anything. Can you prove that for me, please?
No, I've said that for your argument to hold, you need to show that fundamental particles don't depend on anything. Okay?
All right, so here's the thing. What you and Aaron couldn't deal with is, and this is the new atheist movement, subhanAllah, the new atheist movement is crumbling right in front of me. One by one, every single one of them cannot deal with this argument. And it's not because of, by the way, I can't believe it. Like, it really, all it took was just a little bit of bringing out an argument, and the whole new atheist movement in front of my very eyes
could
is
you,
crumbling.
instead of preaching, make your argument?
No, I will make my argument, Julia.
Grandstanding, not preaching.
Yes, sorry.
Pardon?
Grandstanding, not preaching.
Yeah. So what I was going to say, Julia, is you said particles don't depend on anything, right?
I'm talking about fundamental particles.
No
I'm
problem.
saying no.
Can you prove that?
I'm telling you that for your argument to hold, you need to show that fundamental particles don't depend on anything. That's
Julia,
all I'm saying.
Well, you said, Julia. You said right here and right now, and it was on the camera. I'm not a liar.
I say I believe that that's the case.
Okay, can you prove it? No, you said
no,
prove it.
I can't prove it.
So why are you making a claim?
No, because I'm telling you that for your argument to hold, you need to show that that's
what?
the case. That fundamental particles depend on something.
Okay, they depend upon the laws of nature. Disprove me.
Wait, no.
Oh, wait a minute, no.
No, what do you mean they depend on the laws of nature?
The laws of physics.
Which are
presupposed by the study of science.
No. Can you tell me what the laws of physics are?
There are many. If you want to go and see a book on it, I'll direct you.
Okay, no.
You
I'm somebody who studies physics.
Right,
I want you to tell me what you think the laws of physics are, because physicists don't know. That's the problem.
Okay, well, let me answer your question. As someone who studies physics, you're still an undergrad, right?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so you're in your first year?
Yes, I am.
All right, so someone like Martin Rees has wrote a book on just 6 numbers.
I don't know who that is.
Okay, so you should know, because this is a person who's actually outlined the 6 fundamental constants, or among them, for example, N. N he calls nature. He actually calls it N for nature, and he says that is, and that's what he was talking about. The numbers that detail the laws of nature, for example, he mentions 6 different numbers: E, N.
Those are numbers of mathematics rather than physics.
They are physics. What are you talking about?
What university
did you study?
Imperial College London.
Okay, so I'm sure you're clever enough to know that when mathematics is applied to the cosmos, it's called physics. You've just done your A levels.
Mathematics. No, I'm from Germany. I did my Abitur.
Okay, you've done that, so you know the deal, right? So I don't have to tell you that. I mean, I'm not a physicist, but you should know this.
Well, I know that physics is an attempt to mathematically describe the universe.
There you have
the
it.
best we have is the standard model.
So good. Martin Rees done that. He got 6 numbers. He said, what are the rules? It can be described in different ways. Martin Rees has got his standard
What
way.
are those numbers except for E?
And he's got E equals N equals nature, which he said that
which is mathematically meaningless.
No, let me explain. Why is it mathematically? He actually gave a number, which is 0.07.
What significance does 0.07 have?
Is it called physics when mathematics is applied to the universe or not?
Yes.
Okay, so when he says 0.07 is the number N, which is applied to the universe, is that physics?
How does he apply to the universe?
Well, look at E for example, right?
Yes. E comes from mathematics.
Right. So he says that's the conversion of helium into energy, for example.
No, E is. I mean, if we're talking about Euler's constant. Epsilon.
Whatever it is.
Well, epsilon gets used for a lot of different things.
Right. So he uses it in his own way, and he gives his own articulation of it. Go and check the preface of this book or the introduction.
Okay, look. What you're saying right now is that there are 7 numbers which are important.
6.
Okay.
According to Martin Rees.
Go for it. 6 numbers are important.
Right.
How does this relate to the fundamental
particles? Your question was that particles don't depend on anything. They're independent. I'm saying to you.
No, I'm saying you have to show that.
Do you believe that particles are independent?
Of what?
You said please don't retract your argument, because watch this, Josh. This is what Christian missionaries need to learn. Now, you're saying that particles are independent. Yes or no?
I'm saying they're fundamental particles.
No, because you were trying to interrupt me when I was speaking.
I'm saying that to the best of my knowledge, there are a certain amount of fundamental, What I'm basing this off is the standard model, which is the best model we have for the universe right now. It is incomplete. All physicists will admit that it's incomplete.
No problem. But Julia, you said that particles, fundamental particles, don't depend on anything.
Definitionally, they're not composed of anything else.
No. You said, unless you want to retract that statement, which is what every atheist does when they're in front of me. No, you said that fundamental particles don't depend on anything.
I believe that to be the case.
Right.
I do not claim that as true.
Perfect. Now, do you believe that fundamental particles don't depend on anything?
I believe that to be the case,
Excellent.
but I'm not claiming that
Julia,
that's true.
Thank you for saying that, because now what you've shown is that you believe in the existence of an independent being. But the only thing is, no, hold on. The only thing is
Do you know
now.
how many fundamental particles there are?
No problem. But you accept, because before you were saying there's no such thing as a necessary thing. You're saying now that there is. Now hold on, Julie. And you're going to retract your statement because that's what every atheist does in front of me. You said...
You're putting words in my mouth.
No, it's on camera. You said you believe, you just said it 2 minutes ago. You just said you believe that fundamental particles are not dependent on anything. By definition, what you're effectively saying is you believe fundamental particles are independent. Now, what I'm saying
technically, what I'm saying what I mean when I say fundamental particle
what you mean. That's what you mean.
No. I'm just explaining what the standard model says.
Right. Okay. Go ahead.
Fundamentally, according to quantum field theory, fundamental particles are essentially just energy spikes in a field.
But your belief, and
so they sort of depend on energy.
Julia, you shouldn't have come here today and tried to challenge me. Because what you've done, no, seriously, you should really think about it before you come and stand and make claims without revising it.
I've told you what you need to show me
Julia,
to make
I don't
your
need to show you
argument.
anything.
Yes, you do.
You shouldn't have come here because what you've done now is you've given me exactly what I wanted. In the beginning you said that I have to prove that there's a necessary independent being. Now you've just said you believe that fundamental particles are not dependent on... Your words exactly. You believe. You said I believe. Fundamental particles are not dependent on anything. Now all I'm saying as a Muslim is that my understanding of...
So
let me finish.
God is a muon.
Let me finish. No, your God...
That was funny.
It's my ears, Yeah, your God is that. The only difference between my God and your God is size. That's the only difference. Honestly, you need to understand, you're not an atheist anymore in front of me. I've converted you straight to Islam. The only thing you need to do... No. All you need to know and believe in is the right attributes of God and the Prophet Muhammad as the messenger. And obviously, if you want to believe in Jesus...
Is Muhammad the Prophet, the messenger of a muon, of an electron, of a photon?
No, listen to me. You said that...
And also, I will add...
Julie, no, you don't need to add anything. You've given me exactly what I want to hear.
No. I haven't.
You said that you believe that fundamental particles are independent. That's what she said, not dependent on anything. That's the definition of independence. Now, if you believe in an independent entity... Now, let me tell you something from an Islamic perspective. And you have to understand this. Let me just finish, sorry.
I think the word independent is very misleading in this context.
Wait a minute, you said not dependent on anything. How could something be not dependent on anything and not independent?
Can you let me clarify?
Yes, please.
I think the word dependent is very misleading because fundamentally, even inside the standard model, things are interdependent. They're just interdependent on a fundamental level. And the thing is, I know that the standard model isn't complete, so there is some deeper layer somewhere.
So it's interdependent.
Right? Oh yeah, they're interdependent.
So what fundamental particles are interdependent?
Well, in the sense that everything relies on energy to some extent. Everything, as I said, particles are essentially just expressions of energy in a quantum field.
Julie, thank you. You're contradicting yourself. Because interdependence entails dependence. If you're saying that fundamental particles are interdependent, you're saying it's dependent. Then you said that it's not dependent on anything. That's a contradiction. Either you want to believe in this or that. And that's what atheists do. Josh, this is what atheists do. Julie, is there anything you want to add? Sorry, we're done here. Is there anything you want to add? Yes, of course.
You're talking about contingency. I understand it's a pity that people didn't give you a chance to give your full argument. Is the Quran contingent?
No, absolutely not.
So we've got the Quran is not contingent.
No, because we believe it's an attribute of God.
Well, that's the issue, isn't it? So
it's not an issue.
Well,
you asked the question. You thought I would say yes.
No, I knew you would say no.
Okay, no,
I knew you would say no.
You thought I would say yes, but no,
actually,
it didn't work.
So it didn't need God.
No, it is an attribute of God. The Quran is an attribute of God. It's a speech of God.
Is it dependent?
It's a subgroup.
Is it interdependent?
The Quran is a subgroup of an attribute of God, which is speech. So it's
which came first?
No, it was there at the same time. It was always there. It's eternal. The Quran is
well,
eternal.
no, this is what you're saying, but I'm afraid it's not.
Can I take a
Thank you very much. Nice try.
One second.
No, it's not
Anyone
great.
else?
Philosophical
Can I
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
argument.
It's done. Honestly, it's done. Yeah.
You have the
Yeah.
force cause argument by theologians. They say everything is contingent on a necessary being.
Yes,
So
yes.
this is the problem. Yeah,
Yes.
you're presupposing a necessary being, but there
I'm
is
not presupposing that.
Okay.
I'm arguing it. No, that's a false understanding.
Okay.
And once again, you can read my book. It's called Kalam Cosmological Arguments. It's a bestseller now.
Okay.
On what do you call it? On Amazon. And the atheist. What's your name, my friend?
Michael.
Michael. Nice to meet you, man.
Nice to meet
You're a nice man. You didn't come like Julie with a hype and then have to leave with her head her tail between her legs.
Can you
Be nice, man. Be nice.
No, I like you. Huh?
Let's go back to the
Yeah.
discussion.
No, I will do. But what I was gonna say to you, what's your name again? Michael. Sorry, I'm bad.
Michael.
Michael, here's the thing. You're absolutely right.
Okay.
In one way, because what you're saying is that we have to reason. Your assumption here, what I'm getting from you, is that we have to reason the independent being without assuming the independent. And what I'm saying is that the independent, self-sufficient, and necessary being that I've just described has to be understood because of the contrary proposition of there being only possible existence in the world being an impossible one. So to avoid impossibility, we have to believe in necessary being.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, I don't disagree
So because
with that. I'm saying
what we're trying to do as philosophers or as logicians is we're trying to avoid impossibilities, right? Because we know impossibilities cannot exist in the real world. And impossibility is where you have dependent things depending upon dependent things ad infinitum. If you go back to my example of the phone, I think you get my example now. I think you get my argument, by the way.
I understand what you're saying, but I'm just thinking that the terminology that you're using, you're not defining them well. So
Okay,
what
no
do you
problem.
mean? What do you mean by necessary?
Necessary is something which could not have been any other way. Number one, is not dependent. It's independent, so it's not dependent on anything. In other words, self-sufficient, right? And is eternal. So in other words, it's always the case, whether temporality is applied to it or not, that these qualities will always remain in the necessary existence.
So the Quran, outlining all the things that the recitation does outline, creates determinism, doesn't it? Really, which is the argument.
We believe in determinism.
You do believe in
Yes,
determinism.
we believe God is a determinant.
That everything is determined. No free will. I mean.
No, we believe in compatibilism.
Because if you're
Right.
creating a Quran that's saying all of these things happen, talks about the Bible, talks about the past, talks about the future.
What's your name,
John.
John, yeah? I like it, Jake.
Then it's all determined,
determined.
isn't
There's no
it?
free will.
And you don't
Yeah.
you haven't really
No, you're right.
you haven't, and it's no free will, and you haven't really demonstrated the way you tried to demonstrate to Julie and Aaron how the Quran and Allah can be non-interdependent, eternal, and not dependent on anything else, and yet the Quran is determined, is dependent on all of the things that the Quran describes happening.
That's clear. I understand what you're saying.
So
No, because there's a misunderstanding of the Islamic theology here.
I mean, it was a big thing, wasn't it?
Yes, Ahmad and Mu'tazilis and I'm a Hanbali, right? So I follow Ahmad.
No,
right?
yeah, but it was, I mean, I think a lot of people were killed over this, weren't they?
Well, not really. I mean, it's not
Not
as
a lot
big
of
as-
people.
Not a lot, but there's some people were tortured over it. Yeah.
Okay, torture.
Yeah, we're on the side of those guys.
for it,
We're on the side of those guys that were tortured. So, in Islamic theology, the Quran is not created.
I know. Well, in your belief of that,
Yeah, no, it's according to the Sunni understanding,
Yes.
right? So according to the Sunni understanding, it's not created. Obviously, the Mu'tazilis were a group of people that came extinct that believe it was created, but we don't believe in it. So, because it's not created, and they have their own theology, by the way. You have to go.
Not contingent. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's because it's not created. It's like I'm speaking to you now, right? Though I'm speaking to you now, my speech is part of my attribute. It's part of me, actually, right? Because my speech is part of me. So a speech is an attribute of me, but it's an attribute which is intrinsic to me. So in other words, the speech of Allah is intrinsic to Allah, and the Quran is a subset of that speech, meaning it's also eternal, just like Allah.
But you could say the same
It's
about
inseparable.
reality.
It's
You
inseparable
could
from
say
Allah.
the same about reality. That reality is an expression of Allah, and therefore
it's an expression of his
Mind.
attribute of creation.
of creation.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it is. So it's
No.
also
we differentiate.
also eternal.
No. Because what we say is that it could have otherwise not been the case. So the universe can be taken out of existence, whereas Allah can never be taken out of existence.
Can the Quran be taken out?
No.
Why not?
And the Quran in the recitational form cannot be taken out of existence. In physical form, like books and stuff.
No, I'm
yeah.
not talking about.
And we believe that will happen.
I'm
by
not
the way,
talking about the
Yeah,
physical
yeah. We
form.
believe there will come a time.
But you're
where all the Quran-
effectively saying that the recitation is eternal. I mean, even as a recitation,
Yes.
it's quite difficult to have a start and a beginning of something that's eternal.
Yeah, no, we don't have a start.
Well, the beginning of the recitation.
No, it was always there.
Yeah, I know, but when it's spoken by God,
Yeah,
that
yeah.
recitation.
No. So here's a
Begins.
misunderstanding. No, I see what you're saying, but because the speech of Allah is one category, and then a subset of that is the Quran. That Quran is eternal. It was only transmitted to the Prophet by the angel Gabriel, which was already there eternally in what we call the Lawh al-Mahfuz, the preserved tablet. There's an entrenchment of all of those things, codifications, and then that was transmitted to the Prophet.
Yeah, but
Philosophically, I don't think you made a sufficient
No, but
argument.
just taking a line of what you were saying.
Where's
But
the fallacy?
then there is an eternally existing thing with Allah, which is not Allah.
No. We say that's part of Allah.
Yes, but it's not Allah.
No, it is. We will say
Is
it's
it
part of-
identical to?
We'll say it's part of,
It's
part of
ident-
Allah's attributes.
But one second, is
not part of Allah, part
it
of Allah's
identical to God?
attributes. Well, it's like saying, is His mercy Him?
Yeah, but I'm asking, is it identical?
Right. So we will say that it's an attribute of it's one of His many attributes.
Yes,
But his mercy
but then
his merciful acts are different from
It's
his
like
mercy,
saying,
right?
it's like
No,
I've
but
had this
his,
discussion before. as well.
no,
his
I,
mercy is an attribute, but his merciful acts are contingent.
no, but classical theism would say that there isn't anything in God which is not God. So God's attributes are identical to God.
That's your
so this is,
understanding.
no, classical theism is held to that.
Well,
so I'm
look,
saying
that's
look,
a mereological study. It's actually a fallacy, in fact.
it's not a fallacy.
It is a
It's a traditional position in theistic thought.
It's a fallacious one.
No, it's not, because it tries to uphold.
But let's not go
No,
into
but
it.
one
He's
second.
an atheist. He
One
wants to
second.
talk about,
One second. Yeah, but it shouldn't just be because he's an
I think
atheist.
that's
irrelevant.
We're discussing about something which you are holding as true.
Right,
and
so-
I'm coming back to you on a point.
No, first of all,
It doesn't matter if the person's atheist or theist or
that
whatever.
view.
Yes.
Do you believe God has parts?
Sorry?
Do you believe
No.
God has parts?
No,
I don't
no.
believe God has parts.
Yes.
So we're
But then you have a problem because you're contradicting yourself.
No, let me explain, right? We believe God is immaterial and incorporeal.
Yes.
And He's also partless, right?
Yes.
But we-
Divine simplicity, he lacks parts. He's not composed. But then you have a problem because
But-
if he lacks
Go
parts,
ahead, Chair.
yeah, because I'm saying his speech has to be a part. Because then if it's not
Doesn't have
identical,
to. Why are you saying
not? Yes, because the only reason he doesn't have parts is because everything within him is identical to his. So he's not composed
I
by
don't understand.
anything.
What's your position? Is your position that God has parts or not?
No, he doesn't have parts.
So why are you saying that you...
So I'm saying anything within God is identical to
Here's
God.
another thing.
So I'm
is
saying
the Quran, if it's not
What do you mean by
contingent,
Sorry?
What do you mean by-
So I'm saying God's attributes, if it's his omnipotence, his mercy, or whatever you say, has to be identical to God. So that is a business.
What do you mean by that? Sorry?
Yeah,
the
the
articulation, I'm confused by
One
it.
second. The only reason why people have held to that is because they have to say that then God is
Maybe we agree. Because let me explain why we might
Can I
agree.
just say this point?
Yeah.
Because if they are not identical to God, then things within God is dependent on them.
Josh.
God is not dependent on his omnipotence, he's dependent on his
No, no.
omniscience.
and to add, just before you answer that,
No, let me can I
no,
just
it's
come
the
back on
same
that?
thing.
Right.
Same thing. So also, is the Quran able to exist eternally without Allah?
No.
No,
Because
exactly.
the Quran is an expression of Allah.
Well, then it's contingent on Allah.
No, it's like for example.
Well, I think that's a fair argument.
No, so then you have to.
Okay, I know what the issue is here. I do know what the issue is here. The issue is here, when you're talking about things, anything, right? What are the only things you can make reference to? You can either make reference to mathematical truths, or you can make reference to cosmological ones. Like for example, in today's discussion, we're making reference to cosmological truths. When I say cosmological, let me be clear. We're talking about things which pertain to the universe, to the cosmos. So for example, you're wearing a shirt. That's a cosmological. If I were to make an example, analogy with that shirt, that would be a cosmological example, right? Now, what I'm saying is that all of your cosmological understandings, especially as it relates to mereology, and I'm being very clear here, mereology being the study of parts and wholes, okay? Mereology being the study of parts and wholes I'm not for you. I know you're a philosopher, but for other people. No. But you know what I'm saying. Mereology being the study of wholes and parts. Any cosmological example we're going to bring is going to be irrelevant to the metaphysical deity, which is God.
That's not true, because you can have metaphysical parts. So you have things like matter and form.
So
Yes, but I'm saying you just said you can have metaphysical parts, you can have physical parts. Okay, metaphysical parts will be things like matter, form, essence,
we're saying
existence.
all of those things are irrelevant to God.
No, they're not irrelevant to God.
So is
no,
God?
No, they're not irrelevant
Josh,
to God.
what are you saying?
They're not irrelevant to God.
Why?
No, because some people have had the debate: is God's essence identical to His existence?
No. All I'm saying, Josh, is that when we're analysing parts and wholes in the world that we live in, that study gets us nowhere in understanding the metaphysical reality of God.
Yes, it does. Because what you're doing, you negate those of God.
The essence.
Yes.
The essence of it.
Yes. Philosophers have always tried to negate these things of
Josh,
God.
me and you both believe, and I think our respective theologies, that we can never be acquainted with the true essence. We can never know exactly what the true essence of God is.
Yes, I have no problem with
Yeah,
this.
no.
Yes.
So if we both agree with that, that the true essence of God, and put essence underlines.
Yes.
If we don't know what, how God is, how He is in essence, yes, then what I'm saying is that anything you can imagine or anything that you've observed is not relevant to the discussion of God's essence.
Yes, it is. Because,
Okay.
So
Yes,
you're
because
prepared
you
to quite readily say that the Quran is that essence.
Hijab, can comment about it?
Pardon?
Can I say something about your argument from earlier about the dependent because
Yes, of course.
it seems like even if you granted your full argument that there can't be nothing but dependent things, there's a big jump from there's an absolute something to God.
Exactly.
Well,
that's exactly why I came in. Like,
perfect.
necessary.
Is that what you have to say?
The same thing,
You're saying like there's this necessary being.
Yes.
There is absolutely nothing to actually say this is Allah.
All right.
It is just a necessary being.
Thank you
There's
very
nothing
much.
to say it is conscious.
Perfect.
It is personal.
Yes.
It
No.
interacts with people.
You're absolutely right.
Okay.
No.
Yeah, I want to hear what you're
And
saying.
then you can only make descriptive features of it. So like let's say with respect to time, like it's timeless, it's spaceless. There's nothing prescriptive about it.
Thank
you
you very
can't
much.
derive an ought from an is. It just
there it
is.
is. Yeah.
And
Alright.
now you're saying it's Allah.
No,
So that's where the
you're
problem.
right.
Yeah, I'm right.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, let him
and if that's what
He
you're
wasn't saying that.
No, you're right, and you're right. Not that it's Allah with all of the attributes mentioned in the Quran. Absolutely. Do you know what? I want to shake your hand for saying that. Shake my hand. And shake my hand as well, because this is an
Your
interrogation.
own TV show, man. I think you
That wasn't the point that you were making. So that's the whole thing.
Right. So that is a very legitimate interrogation. So much so, it's actually very true, right?
Yeah.
So we can't say, and I want to agree with you here, that just because you have this necessary independent being, right? That this necessary independent being is personal, has the ability to love, is the loving one.
Emotions.
What do you call it? Merciful,
Intentionality.
wrathful, right? No. All
Human
of
characteristics.
you cannot, and this is my contention, right? And I agree with this point. And this is where I think a lot of philosophers have gone wrong, especially Christian philosophers, right? No, and a lot of Muslim ones, a lot of them, a lot of Muslim
I'd
philosophers.
like to hear the reason then.
The reason is because they try to make too many inferences from first principles. The truth is, of the attributes that you can actually get from this necessary being, there are probably just like 10 maximum, if you really wanted to stretch it, that you can get from this. For example, we talked about the necessity of this thing, the independence of this thing, the fact that this thing is, pardon?
Timeless?
Timeless, you could, possibly, right? That could be argued, by the way. Certainly you could say that the eternity of these things. Apart from that, from this particular argument, you could say knowledge. You could make that inference because of the fact that the universe is placed in a certain way. You can make the argument of particularization, which is the argument of so many philosophers. And I'll tell you that's a different argument, by the way. But so these are the attributes you can get from God. But you can't get the attributes of love and all this. Now I agree with that. Now, so here's the point. This argument, for me, or for us Muslims, it defines because we have a basic understanding of God. What is the basic definition of God? We have it in Surah Al-Ikhlas, in chapter 112 of the Quran. So we say, قُلْ هُوَ اللَّهُ أَحَدٌ. Say He's God, one and only. So who is God? According to the Quran, what is the basic definition of God according to the Quran? That He's one and only. Oh yeah, and oneness being one of the major attributes by the way as well. Okay. So one and only, that He's independent, that He's begets not nor is He begotten, in other words He's eternal. And in other parts of the Quran it says that He's awwal wal-akhir, basically He's eternal, right? Pre-eternal and post-eternal. So, in other words, what we're saying is, that apart from those attributes, I can't say, well, from this argument, I'm going to say God's personal. And if someone came to me, even as a Christian or a Muslim or a Jew, and said, look, like William Lane Craig does and many other people do, and say, look, we can, Richard Swinburne and other individuals, and say, look, we can see that it's a personal God. I say it's a very weak argument, in my opinion. I take that on board fully. So what I say is that in order for us to know the remainder of God's attributes, for us we have to be acquainted with some kind of revelation. And so ipso facto, if you have a revelation, say Bible, Quran, or any other revelation which claims to be from God, we have to scrutinize that revelation, and whatever one is the most authoritative would be the basis for the acquaintance of the rest of the attributes of God, which we have not been acquainted with from logical first principles. So yeah, I agree with that point.
So why does it? You said something. Why does it have to be one necessary being?
Because if you can't have two,
Why can't you have two?
You can't have two independents.
Why?
Because if you have two independents, then which one is depending on which?
No, they don't have to depend.
All right, number
They
two.
don't have to.
Let me explain. If you have the Quran, let me tell you the Quranic argument. Yeah?
No, but I just.
I'm asking you.
Just on that point you said.
I'm answering your question.
Okay, you're answering the question of why they
Why
can't.
is it one?
Yeah, why they can't.
Okay, so the Quran says in chapter number 23, verse 91, it clearly answers this question. لَعَلَى بَعْضُهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ. If this was the case, that there was more than one of those things, more than one Almighty, then they would have both tried to outstrip one another. You can't have more than one absolute controller of the universe.
Like yin and yang.
Because you have three options. Let me explain why. Option one, either they compromise. So for example, you have two independent beings that are all powerful, and they compromise on, say for example, you have a tree in front of you, right? And I'll take control of the branches, and you can take control of the roots.
But can I pause? You made a mistake there. You made a mistake.
Finish the articulation.
But I'm saying already you've made a mistake. Can I tell you? Your argument led you to an independent being, not an independent, omnipotent being.
Okay, fine.
So 1 second.
Yes.
You can't have two independent, omnipotent beings because they will cancel each other out.
No, okay.
But you can have two independent beings.
I see your point.
Yes.
I take your point, in fact.
But you were just arguing for all powerfulness.
No, I take your point. The reason why I mentioned omnipotence here is because we both believe in it. But
I'm saying your argument.
From the argument. Yeah. From the argument.
Yes.
From the argument, then we'll talk about the independence.
Yeah, but you can have two independent beings. You just can't have two
No,
independent.
you can't.
Why not? Tell me.
Let me explain.
Yes.
Because when we say necessary being, it's number one, a being that could not be any other way.
Yes. Okay.
And number two, an independent being. Let me explain.
So why can't you have two?
Right, from this argument, so
Yes.
the Quranic argument is about omnipotence, you're right.
Yes.
There's another argument, there's more than one argument, right? But here, let's go to this point.
Yes.
Say, for example, you have two independents.
Yes.
Or two necessary beings.
Yes.
Okay, what's differentiating a necessary being one from necessary being two?
What's differentiating
Yeah.
them? It depends what your individuating factor is.
No, perfect. Good
Yeah,
answer.
so how do you
Now
individuate?
you're being critical, yeah? Here's the answer. If there is any differentiating, listen to this. You're gonna be amazed by it. It's not by the way. These are not. I have to be fair and honest.
It's very big of you.
No, I have to be fair. These are not my arguments, okay? Your points here that you're asking me, I have to tell you that this is in the medieval books, right? And I can go to my book, Kalam Cosmological Arguments.
For goodness sakes, man. Please, you gotta edit this out, please.
No. Kalam Cosmological Arguments by Muhammad Hijab, a bestseller. Now here's the point. Say you've got that one. Can you show it? Yeah.
Oh my gosh, he's going with this.
Can I show them? Yeah.
Good price though.
£3. £3. I'm trying to. It's only a short read.
I'm changing the memory card.
Okay. So he's changing the memory card. Let's wait for him.
Should be in the books with you. Help me out.
Let's wait for him. No, you're gonna like this argument, yeah? You're gonna enjoy it. It's not my argument. Yeah? I'm just standing on the shoulders of giants. Okay.
No, I just think the ontological.
That's why I'm
argument,
so tall.
I just think the ontological argument is just not a good argument. I think they're better arguments for God's
Josh,
existence.
because you only know of Anselm's one.
I only know about, what are you talking about? I know of Anselm's,
So who else?
I know of Malcolm's, Normal Malcolm, I know of Alvin Plantinger's,
So, okay.
I know of Gödel's,
Good.
so I do know of these people.
No, okay. You've just mentioned four
Yes.
individuals. Let's go through each and
Yes.
every single one of them.
Yes.
All of those four individuals that you've mentioned in the philosophy of religion, Plantinga being a contemporary guy. he's
Planting
still alive.
is the strongest one.
You believe that?
Yes.
That's what William Lane Craig believes.
No, I don't care what William Lane Craig believes. I'm saying contemporary philosophy contemporary philosophy of religion would probably say Plantinga.
I don't want to go into details because people don't care.
But you just made a comment.
But yeah.
Plantinga's argument is probably the best
That's an
ontological
opinion,
argument that we have, even though it's
No,
not strong.
If you look at chapter 1 of my book,
Oh my gosh.
now, I don't know why are you laughing at this? You
No,
made a
because
video-
you're selling me your book,
Just
like
advertising. not
your
the,
book, my
uh,
book. Okay, man.
not
Okay,
the
like, I get it. You wrote a book, great. I
The
mean,
brother's got to eat, man. The brother's got to eat.
hey, come on, man. Yeah.
Well, am I not allowed to speak to you on this level?
You are, but I mean, you're just telling me your book. Okay,
It's without the advert. He paid for the app without the advert.
Okay, listen. For you, Josh, I got some books at home. I'll give you one for free. Just tell me. You got my number, yeah? Just to let you know, I'm not trying to sell you anything, right? It's only £3. I know your cap looks like it's.
I'm going to do a ding every time there's an advert.
I'm not going to talk about that. Alright, so here's what I'm going to say, right? So the ontological arguments Western people are associated with are those that kind of you mentioned, right? Gödel, Kurt Gödel, Plantinga, what do you call it? Anselm of Canterbury.
Anselm, you got Descartes.
Well, Descartes, I don't know if you would count his as an ontological
No,
argument.
it is an ontological. Of course, it's an ontological.
That's not.
It is, and
Fine.
that's the one that Kant refuted. Yes.
No problem.
Yes.
For the sake of it, Kant did refute the critique of pluralism. It's my book as well. Now, here's the point. Here's the point. My understanding of an ontological argument in the philosophy of religion is different, and also I'm backed by a lot of scholars on that. So I've got that. You can research that. I think that the argument that I've made of contingency is actually also operates as an ontological argument. But that's a discussion we can have another day. It's quite technical. I don't want to bore the people.
Okay,
The question of how could there be two independent.
I asked you,
right. So this is the answer. The answer is, if you have any differentiating, if you have two necessary beings, and you have any differentiating factor from necessary being A and necessary being B, yeah? If you have anything that differentiates them, then that nullifies or that cancels out the idea that they're necessary beings. Why? Because a necessary being could not be any other way. And if you have two things which are differentiated from each other, then that suggests that at least one of them could have been any other way.
No, not
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Let me explain it. Josh,
Okay,
take your time.
Say your point.
Take your time.
I was just trying to comment that I don't think that's true.
I know, but you're
I can
doing
give.
Trinitarian, so that's of course
Something to do with
It's
Trinitarianism.
got everything to do. That's why
No, it's not. I'm just saying.
That's why he's doing this.
No, listen. All I'm saying is that your argument is not strong.
Let me explain.
Because your argument doesn't lead to the conclusion
Well,
that it
let me
has to be
explain.
two.
Well, Josh.
Only one necessary being.
Well, let me explain why.
You can finish it.
A
Yes.
necessary being could not have been any other way.
There is no love in Islam. Even your Allah.
That's brilliant, man.
Even Allah doesn't love unbelievers. Your Allah.
So the video is $5 for dollars.
Okay. Anyway, sorry. Continue.
Like a coin, yeah. So if you have a coin,
Yeah.
it has two sides, but it's a single coin. So maybe that's what it's trying to say. Like,
No,
why can't
I'm
there be
saying. Finish your point and I'll comment.
So if a necessary being is a being that can't be any other way,
Yes.
then what we're saying is that if anything differentiates it, if you've got two of them, and say for example, let me make this easy for you. Peter Adamson said it's interesting in one of his podcasts. So I'm going to use Peter Adamson's example, right? And I have to be honest with people that it's not my example. And he was talking about Avicenna's philosophy. You can check this out as a podcast. You can check this out as a reference. He says that, for example, this is example. If you've got two necessary beings, and one of them has a cap, and one of them does not have a cap. Okay, the one that has a cap, could that one that has a cap have been any different?
What do you mean?
You've got two necessary beings. One has a cap, one doesn't have a cap. Could the one that has a cap have been any different?
Yes.
Yes. So it's not necessary.
No. Can I see how the mistake you're making here?
It's not me.
No, the mistake, whoever, you or whatever the person
Have
that
you?
you're
Can I ask you a question? Have you ever thought
Can I
about
say
this?
my point? I'm doing a philosophy PhD. I'm in my third year, and I don't even know about necessity and modality. Are you
but
serious?
Can I tell you why though?
Can I finish my point? I didn't understand why you're going down that route. Okay.
No, I did that because I don't think you've heard this argument before.
Can I finish my point?
Yeah.
Possible. I see the way. What I see is how you're making a mistake is that where you are locating necessity. We are talking about the necessity of existence.
Yes.
Not the necessity of a certain property.
Absolutely.
So the property you said here of wearing a cap is necessarily he's wearing a cap. So he cannot be different. But that's nothing to do with the
That's
existence.
interesting. That's a good. That's a
So
good
I'm saying
way.
yes. I'm saying you're talking
Yeah,
about
yeah.
essential and necessary
No
properties
problem. But
over existence.
But what you're doing here,
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That's a very high IQ point.
Okay.
Yeah, I like that. Well done.
Right.
He's now you're thinking on a higher level. Yeah. I like it. I like it.
Anyways,
All right. So you're right. You're absolutely right. The analogy that I gave. I'm saying, for example, a cap, right? Obviously, in the context of existence could be either arranged in one way, that could be rearranged, or that could be any other way, or not. So, in that analogy of the cap, you could say the same thing. Right? So I just use it as an analogy.
No, so I'm
right?
not even saying your analogy. I'm saying even your point now. I'm grateful you brought that analogy because it makes me understand your point better. Then.
Yes.
So where I believe again you're still making a mistake is necessary existence and essential properties. There are different things. So one second. So
No, but you're taking the analogy now.
1 second. No, I'm not going with the analogy. My existence might be necessary, but I can still gain and lose attributes.
No, you're not getting
Even though I exist forever, I cannot cease to exist.
Yes.
Okay, I'm necessary. I'm independent, but I can still gain and lose attributes, even though I exist forever. So yes,
I get your point.
Yes.
I get you right. But what we're saying is that in which way is this necessary existence existing?
So then I'm going back to my point that I brought up.
No.
So you brought about how can you distinguish between
Yes.
the two? You can have two necessarily existent things that are individuated by different properties. So even though they exist...
Now what you're doing, everyone can see. I'm not being funny, but what you're doing, what he's doing. Okay,
What am I
sorry.
doing? Yeah, tell me.
You're just making a case for the Trinity, bro.
I'm not making a case.
Yeah,
I promise you, I'm
no,
not.
everyone
Listen to me.
can
I
see it.
promise you. I promise you, I'm not making a case.
That's
for
what
Trinity.
your PhD is
Mohammed. Our whole point of this discussion was not about the Trinity. If you want to talk about Trinity,
We had this
can bring.
discussion before.
I know, but I'm saying if you want to talk about the Trinity, we can bring that in.
I know.
All I'm saying to you is that I think you need to. I think.
Joshua,
1 second. Can I just say my point?
you think? Go ahead.
I think your argument is flawed.
Because you want to believe in the Trinity.
No. I'm saying your argument doesn't lead to the existence of one necessary
The reason
being.
why
It
you
doesn't
don't
lead
want
to
it
the-
to, I understand.
Doesn't
because-
want it to.
No.
Why?
The
Why
reason
so?
I appreciate why you don't
Yes.
want it to.
Yes.
The reason why you don't want it to is because you realize if I say there are three independent things, it's a contradiction, bro. Yeah, everyone can see that. Even a small child can see that that's a contradiction.
The Trinity doesn't.
Yeah,
Number one, you don't
that's
know
what
the
this-
Trinity then.
Let's be
The
honest.
Trinity doesn't
Look,
claim
Josh,
that three
Josh,
independent
Josh,
beings.
do you want to be straightforward about this? We've had this discussion once or twice before, and I've said the same point to him before, right? Just as a context. I said to you, bro, that the reason why there's one of the main logical reasons the Trinity can't be true is because you can't have, and I made the point of omnipotence, you can't have three almighties. But then I would also say, attached to that, and by the way, can I be straightforward with you guys? I want to be straightforward with you guys. All of those individuals like Plantinga and Swinburne and
It's called Swinburne.
Swinburne, sorry, Swinburne. It's not what it's called. It's just a pronunciation different. I got the pronunciation.
No, when you say swine, it sounds a little weird.
Yeah, well, whatever.
Yeah, okay.
Swinburne, Swinburne, and what do you call Plantinga, and what do you call it? William Lane Craig. Those individuals. Here's the problem with them, Steve. What's his name? John, and Michael. The problem is Christians use the cosmological argument, yeah. And they use it unashamedly. They take it from the Islamic world, even though they attack Islam's concept of God. They take the cosmological. They call it the Kalam cosmological. In fact, my book, similar name, right, taken from William Lane Craig. He wrote a book in 1979 called Kalam Cosmological Argument. As if there's one. There's not one. That's why I wrote a book called Kalam Cosmological Arguments.
Mohammed,
Right.
Plantinga never defended a cosmological argument.
Well, anyway,
He's never defended.
maximally good.
Yeah, so he's defending an ontological argument. Swinburne doesn't. He doesn't.
He does in his book.
No. I'm telling you, my PhD literally is on his work.
Swinburne?
Yeah, so I'm saying.
I've seen him on YouTube videos.
Yeah, I've met him. I've gone to that. So I'm saying, literally, Swinburne does not. He does not agree with Craig about the Kalam argument.
Yeah,
He thinks the Kalam argument does not work.
But what he does,
doesn't
though-
use that.
No, but he uses a form of the contingency argument.
No, that he sources
Can I
sort of
explain
from Leibniz.
Yeah, no,
He's sorted
no,
from
can I
Leibniz.
explain something to you? Bro?
Yes.
You guys in the Western Ivory Towers, right? You don't understand where Leibniz got his stuff from. You don't understand. You don't know. And you have. And by the way, I'm going to put all of the Christians to shame now because you've been trying to poison the well for the last 20 minutes.
Why are you saying terms like poison the well?
poison. Yeah.
Why?
Let me explain.
Is that necessary?
No, okay.
Because someone disagrees with you about your argument, you're poisoning the well.
Because But let me tell you why. Everyone saw it. I was talking to an atheist, and the guy was talking to me like, at least know that there's a common.
No, but you understand.
Right, Josh.
Wait, no, but one second. But just to clarify this point, so you made an accusation against me.
Okay, no.
Wait, no, one second.
One second.
Let
me just make my point.
Are we seekers of truth? Are we seekers? Yes. Are we discussing about if something's true or false?
Yes.
Okay. So it doesn't matter if I'm an atheist, you're a theist, and this person is a theist as well.
Problem.
If we're talking about an argument and I disagree with your point, because I think it's false, what's wrong with that?
No problem.
Doesn't mean you're poisoning the well. Right? It doesn't make sense.
It is poisoning the well. Because before I say something, poisoning the well, the logical fallacy is before someone says something, you're preempting what they're going to say, and you're telling them what they're going to say.
I think you did that.
Maybe I did that. I'm bad as well. I'm bad as well. I'm a bad man as well. Maybe we're both bad. Let's repent to God.
Josh was trying to make an argument about independent things, and you said, I don't want to go down that road.
Now let's go back.
The assumption.
The point I wanted to make, Josh, was that when you're talking about Leibniz was very, very aware of the Asharite tradition, and he was very, very aware of Avicenna. Now, if I were to ask you, what books have you read from Avicenna?
I haven't read anything.
That's the problem. The problem
why is that a problem?
It's a big problem.
Tell me why it's a big problem.
It's an issue, bro.
Tell me why it's an
issue. You're claiming to be, and you want to be a scholar of the philosophy of religion, and you don't even know of the biggest name in all of medieval.
You just say I don't know. I know of him.
But you haven't read any of his works.
Okay.
No, okay. Here's the problem.
Okay.
Stop.
Have you read Planting as well?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Tell me Planting as well.
Let me just speak.
So tell me about Planting.
I will in a second, but let me just.
Tell me. No, I want to know.
He's a contemporary. He's
but
not relevant to me.
He's not relevant.
Yeah, he's a contemporary.
Sorry.
Just let me explain.
Planting is the leading philosopher of religion.
Now.
Doesn't matter.
Bro, he's
the leading. He just won a Templeton Prize 2 years ago.
Who cares? I don't care.
That's like a Nobel Prize.
Bro,
in this field, it's a Nobel Prize.
You're a philosopher.
So someone who's...
Bro, do you know what Aquinas is?
Sorry? Of course I know what Aquinas is.
Alright, let me explain something to you. Can I explain something to you?
Just because someone's 1,000 years ago, they must be great, but they're living now, they're rubbish.
Spend a second to listen.
Sense.
You're just talking
Your argument doesn't work. No, I'm just saying, number one, don't just discard someone because they are contemporary. Someone could be contemporary.
Them.
No, but you are. You could discard
them.
Josh,
it is an appeal to authority as well.
Thank you very much. What I'm saying to you is, when you talk about Leibniz, his contingency argument, I can prove to you, bro, if you really wanted me to do that with manuscripts, primary source materials, I can prove to you that Leibniz has taken his ideas from Asherites.
But I don't care. What's that to do with anything? Like, if he took it from, great. Muhammad, if he took it from him, I have no problem with that. I haven't got a problem. I'm not arguing against that. It's not about the history of philosophy. I'm not arguing with that.
Josh, you're not letting me speak, bro.
Okay.
Do you know what? He's being quite unruly here today.
Unruly, okay. Sorry about that. I apologize if I'm unruly.
I'm saying to you, bro.
I'm just saying I feel it's irrelevant where we've gone.
Okay,
Because we were talking about independence.
Can you let me speak?
And you're arguing.
Can you let me speak?
Yeah, okay.
Can you let me speak?
Yeah, please speak.
Josh, what I'm saying to you is, honestly, have patience. What I'm saying to you is simple. That the arguments in the form that I'm presenting them is something which is new to you. Simple as that, right? Why is it new to you? Because you and all of the other Christian scholars, most of them, not all of them, definitely not William Lane Craig, but a lot of them, they assume or read through secondary sources what the Islamic Golden Age philosophers have said, and then they make arguments, counter-arguments to that. All of you have not read primary sources on that. All of you don't know what you're talking about when it comes to that. So hold on.
Swinburne is emeritus professor at Oxford,
He doesn't know Arabic.
And he's just saying, you just discarded.
Swinburne does not know.
He had a chair at Oxford, He had a chair at Oxford.
Are you listening?
He just doesn't even know his stuff.
Swinburne, no, listen to me.
Come on, man.
Well, why can't
We're
I say
speakers
that?
corner people. I would even respect Swinburne.
You've both gone off
Hold
course.
on. No, I haven't. I'm saying to you, when you're saying the ontological argument or the contingency argument, from your Western perspective, what you're referring to as, you're referring to very specific Western scholars. Anselm of Canterbury, Leibniz, whoever you mentioned, right? No problem. What I'm saying is that form of the argument, I have never presented it, never defended it, and I don't even agree with it.
Okay.
All right, so...
Do you know Mohammed? Okay, fine. Let's just get back on track. Okay, no problem.
No, this is an important thing for you.
If I've taken someone, I apologize. Let's just get back on track.
This is an important thing for you, bro, because why is this important? Because when I say this is an ontological argument, or this X is I'm talking about something we're not on the same wavelength, bro. We're talking about two different things. So here, if you really want to be humble to a tradition, like for example, if I have no understanding of Hellenistic philosophy, I'd go to someone who's a specialist in that, and I'd go and see. So I'm telling you, bro, straightforwardly, all of the names that you mentioned, all those Christian scholars, all of them have with the exception possibly of William Lane Craig, have a very, and I would even include him, a superficial understanding of Islamic, of the Islamic tradition when it comes to the.
Just one second. The argument
and they can't access the books.
But Mohammed, the argument. All I said was the argument you presented is exactly the same argument that literally has.
I think we should just.
Anyway, we can have this discussion.
Yeah. So he made a very. Do we have free will? Do we have free will?
Yeah, we do. But
he made a very important point. So we are not necessary. We are contingent. So there's a cause.
Thank you. Anyway.
So it's as a result of cause and effect. So he made a good point about everything being determined by necessary, which leads like a domino. So when you kick up the first one, everything goes. So do we have free will?
Yeah, let me explain. So we believe in compatibilism, right?
Okay. Compatibilism.
Yeah, so atheists, Muslims, Jews and Christians have struggled with the question. Everyone has struggled with the question, okay? And this is not a Muslim specific issue. Because the question is, if everything is determined, how is there free will?
Or even if everything's contingent, there's no free will.
No, that's different.
No, everything's contingent.
That's another question.
They're the same.
It's not the same. Contingency and determinism.
No.
Well, I get your point. They're two different questions. Thank you. What I'm saying to you is simple. The question that people ask is that if everything is written or if everything is determined, then how comes we have the choice to do whatever we want? Yeah? Now that question is not a question that Muslims only ask. Christians ask the same question. Jews ask the same question. And by the way, atheists ask the same question as well. Now obviously they don't say that everything is written. But in philosophy you have two schools of thought. In philosophy you have 2 or 3 schools of thought, main schools of thought. One of them is called hard determinism. So hard determinism is you believe that everything is you have no choice in the matter basically, right? Everything is determined for you. Now,
not determined for you is that it is contingent on the past. So it's not like necessarily that there's a final design. It's just that everything comes from the past.
Yes. So you have no choice in the matter.
Yeah.
Right. So in things like there's no choice. There is no free will.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you have libertarians. Now, obviously, it's not a philosophical, political philosophy thing. Libertarians in this context are people who believe that we have free will and there is no determinism, right? In the middle, you have a group of people called compatibilists who affirm, and this is in philosophy, right? Atheists believe in this. Yeah, that affirm the first person experience of having
the illusion of free will and living by it.
You have free will as an experience, but that's only in the context of determinism, right? So it's kind of like a mix of both, and lots of scholars have different views. Now, in Islam, we are compatibilists in that sense, in our own way. So in other words, we say that we do have free will. And there's a beautiful poem, I think it's from Ghazali. He says, I'm going to say in Arabic and then translate. ومن عجائب الجبار أن يجبر العباد بالاختيار. And from the wonders of the compeller, and the compeller here is God, yeah? Okay. That he compels the creation to be free-willed. One more time.
No, I got it.
Got it? No, just for the people. ومن عجائب الجبار أن يجبر العباد بالاختيار. And from the wonders of the compeller is that he compels the creation into free will, right? So into choice. Now the point is, there is no contradiction, according to us, with the fact that God is the determiner of things, but He allows certain segment of His creation, human beings and jinn and so on, to have their own choice, because that's all predicated on the context of His determining it. That's why the Quran says, وَمَا تَشَاءُونَ إِلَّا أَن يَشَاءَ اللَّهُ, that you will not have any will except that God has the will first. In other words, God is the ultimate willer. So if it wasn't for, that's why we say inshallah. If you ever meet a Muslim, you say, okay, inshallah, I'll go tomorrow. So if God willing, right? Because everything is determined by God. Now, I would ask the atheist the question that because a determinist atheist believes in determinism. Like I had a discussion with some atheist young guy, and he said that he believes in determinism. But we're saying, who's the determinant then? Right? Because if you believe in determinism, what determined the thing? Who or what?
Well, it goes back to contingency.
Right. So we say that's the necessary.
Yeah. But that doesn't quite argue the issue around
answer the question.
The fact that Muhammad could only have done what he did because it was written in the Quran or was recited.
No. So you're asking a question of now determinism versus free will.
Well, it's combined.
So that's a question. I don't know why you're making that Muslim specific. That's a question that all philosophers are
but I know it's a broader.
Right. So I'm just giving you my position on it.
But I'm arguing the fact that
it's different when you it's different when you have predestination as well.
No, that's the thing. As an atheists have predestination as well. They have determinism.
No,
it's the equivalent. No, it is equivalent.
What do you mean by determinism?
Well, let me be clear. I've just said this before you came.
Sorry.
Right. Well, let me say it again. If you go online now and write hard determinism, right, as a philosophical school of thought, which is outside of any theology, you can be an atheist and believe in it. Everything literally is determined. You believe everything is determined. In other words, you don't have any free will, right? That's the belief. All right, so
that means it can mean something different in physics, though, like determinism.
No, but this is a view atheists hold. Okay? It's a very common view.
I mean, I'm less interested in what atheist philosophers say about the universe, and as I am about what physicists say about the universe.
Well, that's up to you, bro. Because that's up to you. There are a lot of physicists that are hard determinists as well, if you want.
I mean,
yeah.
So the problem with that is that, like, if you look at quantum mechanics and like particles don't behave in a deterministic way. Like, for example, there's Bell's inequalities.
No, they would disagree. A determinist would disagree with you.
But what evidence do they have for that, though?
They'll say that everything follows a causal chain, and that causal chain is uninterrupted, and that there is an inevitability in things that will come in the future because of the events that came in the past, and therefore there's a determinism.
But also from a very personal
right, so that's what an atheist is. Look, bro, you're not arguing against me. I'm not a determinist. I'm a compatibilist. So go and have an argument with a determinist.
From that deterministic basis, even on a personal basis, regarding to the illusion of free will, is that you can't decide which thought emerges from your mind, and you can't decide which thought you believe. So you are being ruled by a set of thoughts that emerge from your mind, and by a set of continuous beliefs that are really out of your control, and it's the illusion of free choice.
Right, so you're calling it the illusion of free choice. We would say that the necessary existence, or the determiner, if you like, because one of God's attributes is that He determines things. Yeah? He determines things. Right, so God is the owner of determination, right? الذي قدر فهدى. He's the one who literally, and this is not, by the way, determinism. But the point is, he proportioned things and then he allowed things to go. Here, قدر means proportion, not determined. Yeah, but the al-qada wal-qada, which is something different in Arabic, which means that the idea of determination is something which belongs to God, right? So He does that. From our perspective, we believe in that. We believe that God is in control of everything. However, we also believe that since He's in control of everything and He determines everything, He can also He can also determine for human beings that they have free choice.
Yes, but even in this moment, you can't even kind of prove that you have free choice.
No,
even though that's only determined by
right. It's self-evident, right? So as an experience, as first person,
I would challenge that. But yeah.
No, do you not feel it? Do you feel like you're in control of your life? You might feel like, okay, I want to have cherry rather than chocolate, right? You don't feel like that?
No, that's not my choice, is it? It's my condition.
I appreciate it. No, that's a philosophical answer. I'm telling you, I'm talking to you from an intuitive perspective. Yeah, don't say illusion. You feel as if, from a first-person perspective, right now, that you can leave this conversation and go if you wanted to, right?
That's not the issue. That's not how you would define free will or free choice at all.
No, I'm not saying that's how you define it. But I'm just saying that
it's common, isn't it, that people feel they have free choice? So
no problem.
So that's the argument.
Yeah. So from our perspective, we actually make sense of compatibilism through the following. We say that since it doesn't contradict any of God's attributes. Now, the question is, can God allow for a situation where He's determining everything, but allowing, so in other words, is the coexistence, let me put it this way, is the coexistence of godly determinism and human free will against any of God's attributes?
I couldn't answer.
Right. So
like
if
a
the answer is
square
no, if it's
Beyond our
against,
comprehension.
pardon?
It's beyond our comprehension.
Yeah, it's beyond our comprehension. We don't know how it works, but
That's like eternity, though.
But you've
it's not,
got a framework that you're trying to explain to me, and that, I want to hear it.
no. But everyone is saying that. Atheists are saying this. Atheists are. This is something that no one knows how it works. That's the reality. No one knows how it works. Atheists, Christians, Muslims, Jews, everyone. So there's no solution anywhere. You're always going to have the issue of, okay, this is determinism and this is free will. Either it comes together or it doesn't. So here's the thing. This is, first of all, we have to really separate this. This is, make this bold. This is not a Muslim particular issue. No, just clear. You're asking me from my perspective, from a theological perspective, we believe in compatibilism. And we have a reason for believing.
So it's like 50% free will and 50% determinism.
No. It's 100% determinism. 100%. No. It doesn't work like that.
Tell us.
It doesn't work like that. God determined everything.
Everything.
Yes.
Every thought, every choice.
Everything.
Okay.
It's determined by God.
Yes. And in that, He allows human beings to be free in their choice. Now, how? The question is how. No one knows how. No one knows how.
Okay.
But hold on. Atheists don't know how.
Okay.
Jews don't know how.
Okay,
Christians
no, that's
don't know how.
fine.
Wait.
The howness is not defined.
But I think there is a way of, so if that were true, if it was absolutely true that somehow, this is a slightly tricky argument, that everything is determined, but also that Allah says you're also determined to have free will. Michael, you can have free will.
Yes.
Everything else. But everything else is determined, but you can be free. That's tough, right, in itself. And also, if you could prove to me that you genuinely have free will, then that would be part of that argument. But I think, as you know, from a philosophical point of view,
you
can't actually prove.
No, you can't.
You can't.
You can't. You can only do it through intuition. There's only one way.
And I think that's pretty poor.
Epistemologically, it's not pure because that's how we find out how we exist. As people, it's not poor. As individuals, I know of my own existence not through verificationism, falsificationism, or through scientific experimentation. I know I exist because I feel that I exist. In the same exact way as I feel that I exist, I feel like I have a choice of having a conversation with you or walking away. That's experiential. You can't negate that. You can't just say, okay, well, because if you negate that, if you say that, well, actually, I'm going to negate the fact that you feel in that way. Hold on. Then you can also negate the fact that I say that
I think therefore I am.
I know, but that's not quite the point that I'm saying. So if you could demonstrate to me that you can choose what you believe, then that would demonstrate.
I'm not saying I can't demonstrate.
I'm
not saying I can't demonstrate.
If you could, then I would be impressed.
No, I'm not.
That you could just decide what you believe.
Perfect. No.
Free will. Using your God-given free will.
Yes.
That you could decide what you believe.
That's a legitimate interrogation. What you're saying is, you can't demonstrate that free will exists in the real world.
It's not even right now.
Yeah, you're right. You cannot.
Why is that?
You cannot demonstrate on a third-person level that free will exists. You can only do so on a first-person level.
I'm not talking about theoretically. I'm talking about empirically.
I agree with you. Yeah. Empirically, but you can't even demonstrate. Empirically, there's lots of things you can't demonstrate, right? In mathematics being one of them. But what I'm saying is that on the level of demonstration, on a third-person level, it's undemonstratable.
Can I just ask you a question?
So it's first person. What I would say is that there's no reason for us to give third person verificationism and falsification any more or less values than first person falsification. Because you know why? Or expression. Because you know why? Actually, you could argue that the basis of all other philosophical investigation starts with first person inquiry. And that's the understanding that we exist. Now that comes by the way, we prove that we exist through first-person discovery. We know that we exist through first-person understanding. We don't know that we exist from third-person demonstration. So in the same way as we don't do that through third-person demonstration, what I'm saying is that free will is something you cannot negate. It's unnegatable, but it's also unfalsifiable. So it's unscientific. So because it's unscientific, you can't deal with it. It's metaphysical, and because it's metaphysical, We say that you cannot be guided on it, and that's why we follow revelation on the matter. So, okay, there's three schools of thought. The school of thought of hard determinism, compatibilism, and what do you call it, libertarianism. We take how do we differentiate? Because we can't prove anything.
Okay, so
how do we
you
know
accept
that compatibilism is true?
Impossible to know, so you take the scriptural kind of understanding.
Yeah, and that scriptural understanding doesn't negate the fundamentals, attributes of God, being omnipotent. In fact, here's the thing. It's impossible to have an omnipotent God or an all-powerful God at all times and all places unless he's in control of everything and determines everything. It's impossible. You can't say that you believe in a God that is all-powerful unless he's in determination of everything. He determines everything.
Well,
so in other words,
he could decide to say, I'm not going to determine anything within this reality.
If he decides that, then he ceases to be God.
Ah, well, that's another issue. But
he does. He stops being God.
Can I just ask you?
Because if God decides to be a man, then he doesn't become God anymore.
So going back to the personal, and I just want to just check in that.
Do you get the point?
Yeah. But just to check in that I think you're going to agree, but I just want to double check, is that you don't have choice about what you believe. Is that true?
No, I believe I have choice, but that choice was ceded to me by the determiner. Right?
So you have choice given to you by Allah.
Yes.
Great.
But who's the ultimate determiner?
Sure.
Yeah.
So now what I'd like you to demonstrate is you changing your belief back and forward from one belief to the opposite about anything. So one of the beliefs that I think Hamza says about you believe your father is your father, yeah? You don't know your father is your father. So do you believe your father is your father?
Yeah.
Okay, now just show me that you can change that belief just for 2 seconds that your father isn't your father. And if you can do that to me, then you prove it.
Let's do it with your father.
No.
It's a reasonable belief, though, isn't it?
That's a valid question.
What's the question?
Right, okay. So you believe that your father is your father?
With the evidence that we have.
Based on
No,
reason.
it's your belief. It doesn't matter about him. So
no, it does matter about him.
No.
I only know that because he was in the household. He looks like him. He's got the same feet as well.
Well, I mean, let's not get diverted because it is a serious question. You believe that your father is your father, and you have told me that you have God-given free choice, and you have the choice to believe that your father isn't your father. So I'd like you, even for 2 seconds, to believe that your father isn't your father.
Let's do that with your father, if that's all right.
No, you don't. Okay. What are we talking about? My father? I'm talking about
Can
you.
we say someone else's father? Someone else's father. I don't want to do that.
Okay, let's do a different subject. Where were you born?
London, St. Mary's.
Okay, so can you believe for 2 seconds that you were born in Edinburgh?
Yeah.
Go on then.
Okay. Oh, but you mean believe actually believe?
Yeah. Actually believe.
Is it based on
You
reason?
have to give me some drugs first.
No, come on. You're telling me your God. Don't use your God-given choice.
Oh, you mean? Right.
You're going to choose to believe that you're in a.
You can't go against the.
No. You choose that you believe.
I want to speak to you in a little while.
Yeah, try.
Yeah. Okay. So
I get what your point. I thought you were asking a
use your
question.
God-given choice. Your God-given choice. Don't let Allah down.
I'll tell you what
That
happens.
you can believe,
Can I
for 2 seconds, that you were born in Edinburgh.
It happens sometimes, bro. Like,
No. I'm not talking about happening. I'm talking about now, doing it now.
I can't do it now.
You can't do it. Why can't you do that?
Because of the evidence.
Right, so the only way that our beliefs change is based on a set of evidence that influences our beliefs.
Yes.
We don't have a choice about that. We can't choose what we believe. And you get a set
That's
of
the argument
thoughts.
of determinism.
Yeah, of course. But you're telling me, I agree that's the argument of determinism, but you're telling me that you have got a God-given free choice. So therefore, you should be able to say, yes, I totally believe I was born in Edinburgh. You don't know you were born in London.
No. On certain issues, you're not going to change your belief.
No, anything. You cannot move your belief.
Okay, how about this?
Anything.
No, that's a good argument. That's a very good argument. I agree with that. That's what you're saying is that determinism can be proven through the fact that environmental factors determine, if you like, how you're going to conceive certain propositions.
Well, that's true, but
that's
and the opposite. Is that you can't demonstrate the opposite.
No problem, but within those parameters, I go to a shop, that shop there.
Yeah.
All right. There's 2 or 3 options I have. I can get what do you call it? A vanilla or strawberry or lemon. Yeah. These are 3 options I can have. What I'm saying is, now my choice is going to be limited to those three things. So either going to.
But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about your beliefs.
But even
So I'm
that,
not talking
you could argue that even for example, if I choose lemon because I like citric things, yeah. If I choose lemon, then that choice is predicated on my desire, which I had no control over.
Sure. That's a deterministic argument.
No problem.
That's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. That's very good. But then here's the only thing that we have that's very good with determinism. The only thing on a philosophical level that we have to say that, okay, that's all well and good, but there's something here we have to look at, is the experiential nature from a first-person perspective.
But that's where I went back to my point, where you cannot demonstrate even the experiential nature.
No, you can't demonstrate it.
You can't demonstrate
that.
You
agreed with that.
Well,
no, that's fine.
Yeah, that's pretty
fine.
difficult.
But what I said to you was that it's first person, and there's no reason to devalue it because it's first person. It's the undemonstratable.
But I'm talking about your first person belief.
No. You undemonstrate. You're right. You can't demonstrate on third person.
No.
Person, you can.
For you to change your belief.
How I feel. For example, if I feel good, happy, sad, whatever, that's how I feel, right? That's first person.
Can you choose to feel happy when you're sad?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. You can't choose. Yeah.
Yeah, it's illusory. You could argue that from that angle, it's all predicated on a set of past things, right? I get the argument.
And evidence, right?
And
experience.
But that experience that you have, where you're choosing lemon over orange or orange over strawberry, cannot be negated.
No, I know, but I don't think this is a good
but
for that
argument. Moment where I'm choosing lemon over strawberries, for example. Yeah. Now, I am choosing lemon over strawberries. Yeah, I am choosing that. I'm choosing lemon over strawberry.
How do you know?
No, I'm choosing it, right? I feel like I'm choosing it.
You feel like you choose.
Right. So the irrefutability of this is because it's predicated on the unfalsifiability of it. Do you understand that?
Well, explain it in specifics.
Right. So if something is unfalsifiable from a scientific perspective, yeah. So if I say, for example, how I feel, that's unfalsifiable. You can't, because it's not falsifiable.
But you see, this is the thing: is that when you go into specific choices between A and B, right? And if you're a parent, you say you want, an orange or an apple, and it's like, oh yes, I'll have one. You feel like you've got.
Yes.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about in your mind, really. And,
yes, exactly.
And we've agreed with that. But I don't want to get away from that.
Yes.
Because every day you wake up and you have a thought, and you might have another thought and another thought, and only one of those thoughts you believe, but you haven't got choice over which one you believe.
I totally agree to some extent.
And therefore, you are determined that I will get up.
No,
and
I
go
agree with that, bro.
X,
Look,
Y, Z.
I'm not a libertarian, bro. So if I was a libertarian, these arguments would be great. What my position is that everything is determined. However, within that framework,
your position is that you've got free choice given to you by Allah.
Let me explain. My position is everything is determined by Allah. Yeah, He's the determiner. However, within that context, and this goes into compatibilism of some sorts, within that context, that compeller has compelled us, has determined for us, because here's the thing, when you have a determiner, he has determined for us to be free-willed. Since you have now this agency of determination, that agency of determination can compel you, can determine for you to have free will. And we're saying that's not negatory of any of the attributes of God. So compatibilism on this framework is not contradictory. It doesn't make, it's not a contradiction. However, and that's why it's a legitimate school of thought, not just in Islam, but in secular philosophy. It's not something which anyone has been able to disprove. And there's things written on it, papers, if you want to go and check it. Forget about Islam, this is not an Islamic discussion. Right, so since this is something that is in Judaism and Islam and Christianity and atheism, I'm just giving you my opinion.
But not in Hinduism.
I don't know about Hinduism that much.
Well, it's not. But that's the thing. It's not all. It's particularly Judeo Christianity and Islam, the Abrahamic religions that particularly focus on free will in a way. And actually, that free will, even though obviously we
but we say
also creates
I've already said
issue of the relationship.
that free will is predicated. Remember the poem.
I understood your argument. I agree.
But
But the thing is, and I think I don't. We have to end that. But I know unfalsifiable. But even given that free will, and I come back to the point. I know I'm being repetitive. Is even given that free will, we still can't even demonstrate that we've got it.
I agree with that. No, that's we can't demonstrate. We can't demonstrate that we exist.
I know, but I mean...
No, but that's not... I know, it's very important.
No, for you to demonstrate existence is one thing, but to demonstrate that you can change your belief at will, is another thing.
No, you're right. Demonstration, but here's the fallacy. Demonstration doesn't, just because you can't demonstrate something, it doesn't mean it's wrong.
Well, no, in this example, just because you can't demonstrate it doesn't mean you don't have free will.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
Yes.
Well,
you'd have to agree with that.
I don't agree with that.
Anyways, thank you very much.
Yeah, and also about the necessary argument. You haven't actually answered my question. Like this theologians claim like everything is contingent on this prime cause, prime move, first cause, or mover, actualizer. But that's just all we know about it. That we don't know if it is conscious, if it is personal, if it is.
Content over everything. From your
Man, say it straight. Man, don't listen to BBC. Man, don't listen to ITV.
3 weeks ago, you was here and you had your "Make America Great Again" hat on, and things didn't go too well. One of the uncles picked up your ladder and threw it over the bush. What do you think about that?
You see, the people who were harassing me in the black community, they are called black intellectuals. If you follow them, they are Judas. They are the ones